So this is not due to the government of Saskatchewan at all, what I'm about to announce, but it is very significant for our province. The Stats Canada revised numbers for exports are out, and Saskatchewan is now the highest per capita exporter in the country. Saskatchewan businesses, the likes of which who have joined us here this morning, are responsible for us now exporting more to the world than British Columbia. Not bad for a province without any ports. We've seen in the last 10 years a tripling of our exports all over the world. It's not just food, a lot of it's food. It's not just fertilizer, though a lot of it's that, and it's not just hydrocarbons or oil. A lot of it's manufacturing and value-added goods increasingly. And, we see some of the numbers in particular are staggering, a doubling in trade with China just in the last 5 or 6 years. We see similar progress in terms of Bangladesh and India, and lots of growth in Indonesia, growth in terms of manufacturing, certainly on the agricultural side in the United States. So this is very positive, because when we are exporting more goods, of course, that means jobs here at home. That means the chance for businesses to create new opportunities for themselves and others, and that's what is that's really the Saskatchewan advantage, that we could actually have an economy that's working well and growing, and people being able to find work and create opportunities here. So we just wanted to make a note of this. Again, I think it's important the province understand that this is where we're at. We don't want to take anything for granted. We don't want to take credit for something that we ought not to, but I think it's an important development here in the province that we should let the folks know about. I just will finish with this, though. We have as a government in the last 5 years since we took office, we have engaged more in terms of trade missions. There's no question about it. We've increased funding to STEP, the Saskatchewan Trade Export Partnership. I'm happy to report to you that Lionel LaBelle, who runs that for the government and the exporters, is not here to comment. He's in Singapore, where he should be. We've increased funding to them, though, and we're going to continue to go on more trade missions. We had no premier had ever been to Indonesia, though they are, almost 40% of all their Canadian imports are from our province. We need to go to these markets to say thank you and find out how we can do more business. So we're going to continue doing those trade missions and supporting STEP to work with exporters to do the same.
Can we talk about some specifics? What accounts for the doubling of exports to China, would you say?
Well, a lot of it, more and more in food. We just had the Chinese ambassador to Canada here in province this week, and we had a chance to, or it was late last week, had a chance to visit about that relationship. Canola oil and canola seed really growing in terms of numbers into that market. This is also good news. Canola oil competes with other oils that may not, frankly, be as healthy. Certainly the canola growers would argue that, probably with some science behind them. Palm oil is a competitive form of an edible oil that may not have the quality that we would argue that canola oil would have. And as the Chinese middle class grows, their ability to have more protein in their diet and, frankly, different edible oils grows as well. And that's a good example of an increase in trade with that particular market, which is very important.
If you're concerned, if the manufacturing is as strong as it is, can you sort of account for why manufacturing job numbers have been down? Because it would be sort of the one thing that seems counterintuitive in terms of what you're talking about.
You're going to hear in a moment about different ways to do manufacturing in a way that we still have to be competitive. Our entrepreneurs need to make sure that when they export their products around markets that are international, that they have a pretty stiff competition. And so they are looking at things like lean in their operations, just like the government is, to try to do more with the resources they have to be more competitive. They are looking at partnering with those who they might, and they're Saskatchewan companies as well, they might contract with companies around the logistics piece or around manufacturing. And so while those companies aren't reporting manufacturing jobs, they are happening. And they're in many cases happening in province, but not necessarily with that particular company. But I think the short answer to the question, Murray, is that companies are working hard to be competitive, and that probably means lean practices, if not in name, then in principle, that are allowing them to be competitive. And overall, we see the spin-off benefit, because we know we have the lowest unemployment rate in the country. We have a very strong job creation record, and that's in part, I think, because of spin-offs that come from manufacturing. So if they're not the direct manufacturing jobs, there's a huge benefit in terms of new jobs in other sectors that benefit from strong manufacturing.
What's Bangladesh buying?
Bangladesh buys 90% of the lentils that they export that they import. Come from our country. And when they come from our country, they come from 18,000 Saskatchewan pulse growers. So Bangladesh, a little bit of fertilizer, but a lot of food. You know, there's a great story around the Bangladesh trade relationship that we have, and as you know, we were on a trade mission there that has helped us actually inform our decision to try to build a global food security institute, which needs to be about more than the economy actually, and needs to be about some philanthropy, especially with our trading partners where there are so many people that are still hungry. For example, in Bangladesh, there's a high natural occurrence of arsenic, and obviously this is a health issue in that country. Well, red lentils from our province are high in selenium, which has a salutary impact for those who are dealing with high arsenic contents that will occur naturally. And so that's a great story, actually, of our products, you know, they're a food staple, certainly, but they also have a bit of a health benefit there. And it should help us inform what we do with the Global Food Security Institute, because these relationships we should prize, and they're really about more than commerce. You need to walk out of the hotel compounds when you're in a place like Bangladesh or a country like Bangladesh and see that and understand that we can do business, and then we should do a little bit more than just
Pardon
business.
my ignorance. Is it eating the red lentils that offsets the arsenic in a
That's my
person's
understanding.
body?
That's my understanding. The selenium content that you'd find in Saskatchewan red lentils.
Can you talk a little bit about the fact that, I mean, the U.S. has always been Canada's biggest trading partner,
Right.
so you see that. And
Yeah.
so that seems to be obviously something you've talked about getting away from in the last little while, and
Right.
the numbers today would seem to indicate that that's the case. Why is that? Why do you think that's such an important
You know, when, you know, maybe these are sort of rhetorical devices, but I often talk about the fact that Saskatchewan's blessed right now to have what the world wants, and specifically to have what the fastest growing economies in the world want. The fastest growing economies today are still they're the Chinese economy, they're India, they're Bangladesh. The Indonesian economy is growing at 7%. And when these economies grow, the middle class expands. When the middle class expands, they're going to demand more energy. More of them, frankly, will buy cars. Their diets will change. They'll become more protein intensive. While we have all of this capacity to grow a lot of pulses, very high quality, high protein crops here from the province. And so that's part of the explanation. In a world where the fastest growing economies want food security and energy security, you know, I like our chances. It doesn't mean we're not going to cycle. You know, the world economy there's some issues certainly there. We're not going to be immune to them. But I'm very hopeful that floor prices may have changed for a lot of these things just because the critical mass that has occurred in terms of growth in these countries. And I just want to, I will say this, we did announce early on in our term that we'd like to see our exports diversify. The U.S. will always be our most important trading partner, but we are the second least dependent on the United States for exports. Even at that, we're 60% dependent. And so we need to diversify. We need to find other places to sell the things that Saskatchewan entrepreneurs and Saskatchewan producers have to offer.
Of this record amount, how much does agriculture account for then?
Well, I believe that agriculture exports in 2010, and these are the 2012 numbers. I think in 2010 we had hit over $10 billion. And so if that holds, we would be looking at a third, right? And so a lot of people, I think those are the numbers, and so I hesitate a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. If it isn't, we'll follow up. But consider that fact if it is indeed a fact. Let's talk about that possible fact for a moment. That underscores why our growth plan focused a lot on agriculture, because this is a true strength in our economy right now, and I think holds promise for us going forward through some unstable international economic conditions. Agriculture is a huge advantage for us today, and you're about to hear in a moment, it's not just about producing high quality food or having a third of Canada's beef cattle, it's also about the short line implement manufacturing that's occurring here related directly to agriculture. It's about agricultural manufacturing in general that are also part of this export story today.
This is my own ignorance, but why do you say these numbers aren't due to what the government's doing?
Well, they're due to what our entrepreneurs are doing. They're due to external factors, you know, that I've mentioned. For example, we're not responsible for our growth in the middle class in China or India or any of these markets that are so important to us. It's happened. We need to make sure we're supporting the trade-export partnership that opens doors in those markets where there's opportunity. So we try to do that. We've increased funding in the budget for that. We need to be engaged in trade missions. There are things that governments can do to help. Don't get me wrong, but I just think it's important to say that it's the entrepreneurs, it's our producers, and external factors that are the real story behind these numbers.
Did you guys